Hello everybody, my name is Professor Rich and today we're learning English and we're focusing today on very powerful high-level phrases for IELTS speaking, but also these are very useful phrases just for conversation in English, and they happen to use very high level of grammar structures. So let's take a look at their plan for today. I've called this class power phrases. Yeah, that's my new term. I'm hoping to make this term popular. Power phrases. So power phrases basically are high level phrases in terms of form and grammar, which are also useful and flexible. I think it's quite important for power phrases to be useful and flexible. Useful in that we can use them in certain situations. Flexible in that we have the ability to customize them or use them in different contexts. So we don't just want a specific phrase that I can only use in one specific situation. That could be a phrase like, could you tell me where the shoes are, please? Right? I mean, there's not that many situations when you will ask someone specifically where the shoes are. So we want them to be flexible and useful, but also we want these power phrases to impress a speaking examiner. So that's part of what we want to do here. We're looking for phrases which actually use a high level of grammar. So that is the plan for today. We will be looking at some of those phrases and then we'll be doing a bit of practice. I just want to say hello to everybody who is joining us today in the chat. It's lovely to have you joining us live. And if you are new to the channel, now would be a great time to smash that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the future updates. This is the best place on the internet to learn English. So here's one to start us off. And remember that we're thinking in the context of giving opinions, because giving opinions is the context of IELTS Part 3, but also giving opinions is something that we do all the time. It's a very useful part of conversational interaction. So we're talking about giving opinions, and here's our first phrase. It's quite a fixed phrase. There aren't many elements of this that we're going to change. We're just going to use it as a fixed phrase. And it is simply, this is something which I've been thinking about recently. This is something which I've been thinking about recently. This is something which I've been thinking about recently. We could say that instead of which. This is something that I've been thinking about recently. This is something that I've been thinking about recently. This is something that I've been thinking about over the last few days. This is something that I've been thinking about over the last few years. This is something that I've been thinking about over the weekend. This is something that I've been thinking about today. So we can actually change the time phrase at the end there, the adverbial that says recently, but more or less this is quite a fixed phrase. Now, why do I like this phrase? First of all, it's complex. And complex doesn't mean just complex in any way. It actually has a specific meaning in English grammar. When we say that a sentence is complex, it means that it has a subordinate clause. And the subordinate clause here is the part of the sentence which comes after which. So after which we have this subordinate clause. That means that this part of the clause is dependent on the first part of the clause. So it has a subordinate clause which makes it a complex sentence. So that's the first thing we like. Then we have the present perfect continuous. And I like that because the present perfect continuous is a tense which non-natives struggle to use a lot. It's one of those tenses which native speakers use quite a bit, but non-natives really avoid using the present perfect continuous and the present perfect in general, actually. So I like that because it gets a tense in there that is often not used, and you don't need to worry about why it's in that particular form. It doesn't matter because this phrase is so flexible, right, that we can just use this phrase any time that we're giving our opinion. And then finally we have the very flexible use. As I said, you could use this basically when you're giving your opinion or about anything, or if you're making a decision or many other situations. This is something which I've been thinking about recently. Just think about this. If someone says to you, "Hey, Mr. Gordillo, what's your favorite beer?" Well, I don't know why I'm trying to do Manuel's accent. That's a bad idea. Let me tell you, this is something I've been thinking about. That's not Manuel's accent, right? I'm going to stop that. Sorry, Manuel. I stop. Well, let me tell you, this is something that I've been thinking about recently. I used to like San Miguel, but I've started drinking Estrella or whatever. Okay, you get the idea. So the point is that you can use this phrase flexibly in any situation, such as giving your opinion on your favorite beer. This is something which I've been thinking about recently. Now, I'm going to show you another phrase now which has a similar form. And by the way, smash that like button and hit subscribe. So here's another phrase which has a similar form, but it's a little bit different. The meaning is a little bit different. So this is something which I'd never thought about before now. Now, there's a few reasons why I really like this one. Although it starts off basically the same. We have the cleft sentence and the subordinating clause at the start, which gives a nice bit of complexity. But it actually has the past perfect, and the past perfect is a neglected tense. It's neglected not only by non-natives, but also actually by natives. So natives themselves actually don't use the past perfect a lot, but it is useful sometimes, and here is a great way of using it in a very flexible way, which again, you can use when basically someone asks you about more or less anything. Like, even, let's take the example of beer. You know, Vitelli, what is your favorite beer? This is something which I'd never thought about before now. You know, that could be true, couldn't it? It's possible. I mean, do you really think about your favorite beer? It's one of these phrases which you can say for basically any opinion that someone asks you. Would you like to learn a new instrument in the future? This is something which I'd never thought about before now, right? So why do we use the past perfect here? Well, it's kind of saying that now I am thinking about it because you asked the question, but before you ask the question, which is something that happened in the past, even if it's 5 seconds ago, it is something that happened in the past. Before you ask that question, I'd never thought about it. So the grammar does work here. We can actually employ the past perfect here. It's a great way of getting the past perfect in to your repertoire, a great way of ticking that box. And let me tell you that speaking examiners will definitely notice when you use the past perfect. They will notice. It's one of those things that as a speaking examiner, it makes your ears pick up and you're like, what? The past perfect? Hey. I mean, even advanced students often don't use the past perfect. So it's a great little tense to hear. Okay, let's move on to our next phrase. And we're still on the kind of fixed phrases. We will be talking about some more flexible phrases in a moment, but we're still on the kind of fixed phrases here. And we've got a lot's been said about this recently in the media. A lot's been said about this over the last few years in the media. A lot's been said about this A lot's been said about this over the last year in the media. A lot's been said about this week in the media. So, the form here is a little bit different. We do have some flexibility where we might change the time phrase, the adverbial, but also we might change this in the media. Like, a lot's been said about this recently in Westminster. A lot's been said about this recently in the classroom. A lot's been said about this recently at college. A lot's been said about this recently with the general populace. So we might actually change our little prepositional phrase here saying where things are being said about this. Now, the reason why I really like this in terms of form is we've got a present perfect passive. Now, first of all, passives are underused by non-natives as a general rule. It does depend. There are some non-natives who just love using passives too much and they overuse them, even using passives when it's not relevant. And some students just start doing that. But in general, using passives correctly is something which doesn't happen a lot with non-native speakers. So it's a passive, but also it's a present perfect passive. And the thing about present perfect passives is natives use them quite a lot. What's been done? What's been done to that chair? What's been done to that chair? The chair's been pushed over. My phone's been stolen. My house has been painted red. My window's been broken, right? Natives actually use the present perfect passive quite a lot, but it's one of those tenses which non-natives don't use so much. So I like it because it's specifically a present perfect passive. The kind of passive which non-natives often use are simple passive, simple passive, so present simple passive, and modal passives. And modal passives are actually counted as being sort of upper intermediate, but non-natives actually use modal passives quite a lot, probably because they're sort of easy, right? It can be said, it should be done. But the present perfect passive is less common. So that's why I really like this particular phrase. We've got a present perfect passive. And again, we've got very flexible use where we can change the time clause recently, and we can also change the prepositional phrase to say where it's been said. A lot's been said about this recently by scientists. A lot's been said about this recently on TV. A lot's been said about this recently on the Joe Rogan podcast. Right, so now we are going to move on to some slightly more flexible phrases, and we're getting into the conditionals. Everybody loves conditionals, right? Conditionals are great, and there is really no reason why in a speaking exam you wouldn't use a conditional. In any speaking exam you ever do, you should try to get a second conditional in there. And if you're really good, try and get a third conditional in there. And hey, you could even try a mixed conditional. There's no reason why not. Conditionals are super flexible. But let's have a look at some useful phrases that we can use for conditionals. So if we didn't have Z, then we wouldn't infinitive. If we didn't have Z, then we wouldn't infinitive. So this is a second conditional. And again, it's super flexible. Like if someone says, Rich, go to the beer. Rich, what's your favorite beer? You know, my favorite beer is Stella Artois. If we didn't have Stella Artois, then we wouldn't be able to have a great time at the pub. If we didn't have many different types of beer, then we wouldn't have to think very much about this question. If you didn't ask me that question, then I wouldn't have to give you an answer. Okay, so I really like this. I like how Z is actually a noun, and I know I changed it just then and changed the verb, but I like how Z is a noun because it's quite easy to take a noun from a question. Like if someone asks an IELTS question which is like, how is entertainment changing in your country? Well, these days, people are watching a lot of streaming services rather than watching films on TV. And I think that actually that's a good thing, because if we didn't have streaming services, then we wouldn't be able to choose from all these different options. So again, really great. It's a complex sentence. Every full conditional is a complex sentence because a full conditional always has a subordinating and a subordinate clause. It's a second conditional. Of course, everybody loves second conditional. And again, very flexible use. We just replace Z with a noun, and then we replace this bit with any infinitive, and that's it. Now we're moving on to our third conditional. Are you ready for this? Rich, what's your favourite beer? Well, if you'd asked me last year, I would have said Stella Artois. However, now I think I have to say none, because actually I don't drink alcohol anymore. How is entertainment changing in your country? Well, if you'd asked me last year, I'd have said that streaming services were the big breakthrough. However, now I think that doesn't seem to be the case. In fact, it's been reported recently. That most streaming services make a loss, apart from Netflix. So now I think that live entertainment's making a comeback, especially entertainment involving technology, like virtual avatars. So there's a very popular ABBA revival concert in London that uses virtual avatars. Super popular, and it's really expensive. It's like £60 a ticket. Loads of people going to that. It's got massive reviews, and I think to some extent live entertainment's actually making a comeback, especially in terms of financial viability. Sorry, I'm going off on one there. So it's a chance to use a third conditional. Of course, it's a complex sentence, but also it's a third conditional, and third conditionals are just magic. You know, they are really the kind of thing which, you know, the examiner will really notice a third conditional, because they're just so rare, but they're so cool in terms of the grammar form, aren't they? And you notice you can change the idea of last year. It doesn't have to be if you'd asked me last year. You can say, well, if you'd asked me yesterday, you know, hey, Manuel, what's your favourite beer? If you'd asked me yesterday, I'd have said Estrella Damm. However, now I think I want to say no beer at all, because last night I drank 10 Estrella Damms or whatever. Quite easy to change the time period and therefore make this a very flexible phrase. And you also have the opportunity to express two opinions on one topic. So, you know, if you'd asked me last year, I'd have said, how do you think we should tackle the climate problem? If you'd asked me last year, I'd have said we should build more wind turbines and increase our use of wind energy. However, now I think wind energy is not the way forward. I don't think it's effective enough. And I've seen how they dispose of the wind turbines at the end of their life. They just bury them in landfill. It's really bad for the environment. And I actually think that solar power is much better, for example. So you've actually got the opportunity to offer two opinions on this topic, so you can really expand your answer. It really gives you more opportunity to say more things in the exam. All right, so here's a little summary of the phrases which we've seen today. What I would like you to do here is try to remember the missing words in the phrases and type those in the chat. There are 8. There are 9 missing phrases, so type those in the chat. I never said such a thing. I was talking about a different Manuel. Estrella Damm is a brand of beer, but damn in general is a not very rude swear word. Particularly the Americans use it. They say, damn. Damn, boy. Damn. So it actually comes from religion, and it means abandoned by God. If I hadn't drunk myself legless last night, I'd be hitting the gym this morning. So Vitelli there showing us a little mixed conditional. You can see it's a mixed conditional in the first part of the clause. If I hadn't drunk myself legless last night, we have the third conditional form using the past perfect. And then in the second part of the clause, I'd plus infinitive. So he hasn't gone for I'd have plus participle, which would be the third conditional, but instead I'd plus infinitive. That makes it a mixed conditional. And we got some answers coming in. Type your answers into the chat. I'll go through the answers in about 30 seconds. And then we'll do a bit of practice. Smash that like button, everybody. Yeah. And hit subscribe. Feel free to comment down below the video. Okay, a variety of different answers coming in. I'll just go through the answers right now. So we got, this is something which I'd never thought about before now. This is something which I've been thinking about recently. A lot's been said about this recently in the media. If you'd asked me last year, I'd have said X. However, now I think if we didn't... What was that? Oh, if we didn't have Z, then we wouldn't. Rich, come on. Let's go back here. If we didn't have Z, then we wouldn't infinitive. Right, great. And there's our answers on the screen. Would you like some pronunciation for this, or shall we go straight into practice? If you want pronunciation, just type in the chat. Pronunciation. Pronunciation or straight into practice? I could do a poll, but I'm just going to ask. Let's see what the interest is. If you have the energy, if you put in the effort to type in the chat, you will get your way. Takeshi's saying something about contractions. And Theodore's like, moving on. You don't want pronunciation practice, Theodore. Pronunciation, that makes it 1 for 1 for the people who care enough. I don't think that's enough interest. I think we are going to move on. Maybe we'll come back at the end, Sonia, for some pronunciation. Right, so I'm going to show you some opinions, and I'd like you to type in the chat what you think about them. You can try to use some of the phrases from today's class if you can remember them. However, that is not 100% necessary. You just need to type your opinion in the chat, and I'll give you my perspective on those opinions. All right, so use the phrases from today's class to talk about this topic. The The first topic is how entertainment is changing in your country. This is a popular topic for IELTS. How entertainment is changing in your country is the topic. So, little comments in the chat. Just 2 to 3 sentences about this topic would be great. If you can use the phrases from today's class, that's fantastic. However, you don't have to. It's entirely your choice. And Manuel Gordillo is accusing me of having beer hidden in my coffee. Unfortunately, not the case. It is just coffee. Can I show you? Whoa, look at that. You can almost see it. It's a cappuccino, actually. Sort of. My version. It's the wrong kind of cup, though. I should use a proper cappuccino cup. Because I have recently acquired a rather cheap milk frother. So I've started to make cappuccinos. Absolute coffee addict. I love it. How is entertainment changing in your country? It's a popular IELTS topic. Actually, the topic would be entertainment, cinema, theatre, things like that. Sonia says, if you'd asked me last year, I'd have said I don't know. However, now I spend a lot of time watching TV. Interesting. Really, that's changed for you over the last year? And Emmanuel says there isn't classical music. Really? There's no classical music? I mean, actually, I would say over here, classical music is thriving. There's a lot of interest in classical music, I'd say. As you would hope for. In a classical country. At least it was a classical country. Might talk about how modern England is changing in a future class. But traditionally, we enjoy a bit of classic things here. Classic entertainment, such as classical music. Any other comments about how entertainment is changing your country? So we've got Pachu, and Pachu says, I think entertainment is changing a lot in my country these days. Many people watch movies in the home rather than going to the cinema because this saves time and money. Fantastic, Pachu. Yeah, this is a real big issue. And this has been happening in the UK for some time now. That's a good phrase, isn't it? This has been happening for some time now. This has been happening in the UK for some time now. Oh, hello there, Derek Nguyen, who has offered a 100,000 dong super chat. Thank you very much there. It's quite rare that I get super chats, actually, so I'm super happy about that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Derek. It's much appreciated, sir. Let me know at the end of the stream if you have any questions about English. I would be happy to answer them. Sonia says there are a lot of cultural and traditional festivals. So you don't think that's changing much, do you, Sonia? All right, let's move on to the next topic. And what happens if I do that, by the way? Oh, that's great, isn't it? Look at that. Look at that. That's cool. It looks super cool. We need to have more super chats just to get that image. Thank you, Derek. All right, moving on. Using the phrases from today's class, talk about this topic, how young people and old people celebrate differently. Again, this is a common one. Yes, I appreciate that, Pachu. Also, there is a link down below the video where you can directly buy me a coffee And I have made the promise that anyone who does that may request a topic for a future stream, which I will do. Talking about the entertainment in this country, I would tell you it's growing at the speed of light. Anti-all. What do you mean anti-all, Manuel? We've moved on the topic anyway. We're talking about how young people and old people celebrate differently. So, comments about this? What do you guys think? I think if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd have said that young people like to get drunk and old people like to spend time with family. However, now I think that young people don't like to get drunk. I think that young people like to take photos of themselves with their friends and post them on social media to show people that they're having such a great time. Actually, young people these days don't seem to drink so much. Drinking has really gone down in popularity. Sonia says, I've been thinking about that over the weekend because there was a noisy event full of drunk young people. All right, so in Italy, young people still drink a lot of alcohol. Like I say, in the UK, it has really gone down, drinking. I mean, we've had an increase in the Islamic population, for one, but also just young people in general are more aware of the dangers of alcohol because, that's how they're educated. The school system tells you that alcohol is bad for you. Manuel makes the rather direct comment that younger people have fire in their eyes and elderly people have a glow. Do young people have fire in their eyes? I don't know. This is something that I'd never thought about before now. Fantastic, Takeshi. This is something that I'd never thought about before now. I would say young people have a tendency to get involved with booze, whereas the elderly inclined to low-key things have a special meal. Yeah. And Derek says, I would say that young people celebrate things almost the same, but only if you... So we need to change that a little bit, Derek. Let me do a little correction here. Because you're trying to be creative in changing it, so let me fix it for you. So I would have said that, we need the would have. I would have said that young people celebrate things almost the same, but only if you'd asked me, if you'd asked me several years ago. However, now, young people have a very distinct way to celebrate things, like shopping. Yeah, right. Shopping, for sure. Shopping and taking photos. Taking photos. You know all about it, Derek. My wife is Vietnamese and she loves taking photos. One of her favorite things. I think Derek will testify about the need for Vietnamese ladies to take photos. Pure Care says, even my boyfriend never revealed his birthday to me because he doesn't want me to wish him a happy birthday. Wow, really? Not only do young people drink a lot, but also they don't follow the rules as a rule. There's a bit of repetition there with the word rule, Manuel. I would avoid that. Always avoid that kind of repetition. Even if we're using rule in a different sense, it's still just good form to avoid it. And we do have there a complex clause because we've got not only X, but also why. That's a complex clause. Very good. Yeah. Elderly people very often forget that they're young as well. Elderly people lack tolerance. I'm trying to stay as young as I can. I don't consider myself an elderly person, but the joints have started to get stiff, for sure. So I've started to do a lot of this sort of stuff throughout the day, kind of moving a lot. Let's keep moving. It's all you can do, right? Just keep moving. Really important to move. And all you people sitting at home right now, sitting in a chair, not doing anything, just take a moment, stand up, stretch out the arms. Oh, showing the belly. Belly reveal, folks. Stretch out the arms. Stretch out the shoulders. Stretch out the legs. There we go. See, we don't just do English on this channel. We also do exercise. We're now a full-on exercise channel. All right, back to it. Let's change the topic. We're going to talk about, interestingly enough, coming on from exercise, we're going to talk about the importance of diet in your country. The importance of diet in your country. So, thoughts on this? The importance of diet in your country. Notice this theme of in your country. This is a very common way of asking questions in IELTS because it often stimulates people's need to give an opinion, because people always want to tell you about their country, right? They always want to say, hey, in my country, this happens, that happens. And of course, the fact that English is this language which people use to talk between cultures, between countries, then that's why you often get this kind of question where we're saying, in your country, in your country. So, Pure Care says, mainly we eat rice. Just rice? What do you have on the rice? What do you have on the rice? I love it. I have no idea what about my ideas when I become an elderly man, but of course I'll be absolutely tolerant. Does that make you tolerant, having 5 kids? Were I to answer the importance of diet in Spain, I would be laughing for a long time. We live near the sea and we eat a lot of seafood. What about the importance of it, though? Is it important? See, a lot of people talking about the diet and what you eat, but how about the important? Because it's a key thing here, the importance of diet. The point is, for example, in American society, we might say that diet just becomes like a functional thing, because of the way of life that people work and all the rest of it. So with diet, it's just like calories in, quick as possible, get back to work. Fatty food. Fatty is an adjective, so fatty food is a new style. You mean a style of person or a style of food type? Hey, if you are enjoying the stream today, remember to smash that like button and hit subscribe. All right, Manuel. No more corrections. Manuel gets a 9.0 IELTS. C2+. Julia says, it never crossed my mind that diet will play a critical role and your health condition will fluctuate based on what you consume. I think it sounds a little bit odd to say that never crossed your mind. you might want to say the importance of diet in my country has never particularly crossed my mind before. However, anyway, totally agree with you, Julia. I've started to really go for like natural foods now. I just want to avoid processed foods as much as possible. A lot, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said that as long as you get the right things in your diet, it doesn't really matter what you eat. But I've really started to change my perspective now, and I've really started to get the idea that if something's processed, you should just avoid it. Stick to natural foods. There's a lot of science that we don't know about here. Nutritional science is really underdeveloped. When you eat broccoli, we can only account for some of the organic compounds in broccoli in terms of our nutrition. So there's a lot about fiber and about, I think they're called chloroplasts, that we don't actually understand. So it's not just about vitamin, like the purpose of eating broccoli is not just to get vitamin A. There's more to it than that. So you can't just eat a McDonald's burger and take a vitamin A supplement. And I've only recently started to realize that. I used to just think for a long time, I thought natural diets is a load of nonsense. They're just trying to make money. You can just eat McDonald's and take supplements. But I'm totally changing my perspective now. I've gone completely the other way. But hey, take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not an expert. I'm an English teacher. Derek says, I never noticed that, but it's a very interesting topic. In my country, we have herbs and veggie in almost every meal, so people don't pay too much attention to diet. Yeah, that's right, Derek. I mean, Vietnam, you've got loads of herbs and vegetables in most meals, and it all just gets kind of thrown in together, doesn't it? And I mean, Vietnamese people in general seem to be pretty healthy in terms of body weight, right? I don't think I've ever seen a fat Vietnamese person. Ever. I'm sure it exists, but I don't think I've seen one. Like, you see very old people who sometimes have a bit of a belly, but not fat. Sonia says, if you'd asked me years ago, everyone would have thought as a diet as a way to lose weight. Now we consider diet like a healthier attitude. Brilliant, Sonia. It is also worth noting that the word diet in English just means the food that you regularly eat. So we're not necessarily talking about a special diet or a special way of eating, like going on a diet or eating or being on a diet. But when we say diet, we can just mean what people eat regularly. Fish and curry, salad, meat, coconut. Great. It sounds quite healthy, Pure Care. Is that's somewhere like, that has to be somewhere in East Asia or South Asia, right? Takeshi says, it seems like, we're going to go seems, not looks. It seems like people in my country are indifferent to nutrition. A lot of them only care for taste. Deliciousness, not quite right, because we're focusing on the extreme adjective there. So let's say taste. A lot of them only care for taste and thus have terrible renal issues. Kidney issues. Renal is a bit of a medical term. It's important to eat foods to withstand the intense heat. Ah, yes. So that means not like heavy foods like bread and so on. However, more and more people get diagnosed with diabetes nowadays. People should be aware of how important diet is to their health. Yes, Theodore says, because of poor living conditions, people in Azerbaijan are prone to eat cheap but nutritious foods. Hey, I understand it, Theodore. People in the UK at the moment are prone to eat cheap and try to find nutritious foods because the cost of living has become so high compared to the amount of money that people earn. And I think a lot of people are realizing that now. It's very difficult to live a healthy lifestyle in the UK now for most people. I'd go with you, Julia. I'd go along. We're going to say go along with Manuel to say agree. I'd go along with you. Well, this is something which I've never thought about. So the phrase, Pachu, is this is something which I'd never thought about before. I'd never thought about before. This is something which I'd never thought about before. Many people use balanced diet to keep their health strong. People use food such as cereal-based fruits and vegetables. Do you think cereal-based food is healthy? I'm not so sure. I have a few oats, but other than that, I tend to avoid cereals. I'm not sure that they're healthy at all. I don't know. What do you guys think? All right, everybody, let's move on to the next topic. Is this our last topic? Oh, no, there's two more. Okay, second to last topic. And the question is, how important is it to use social media and why? Galandeep Singh says, hello. We are practicing IELTS Part 3 with some useful phrases which we talked about earlier in the class. How important is it to use social media and why? Common IELTS style question. Oh, excuse me. Smashing the microphone. While I smash the microphone, make sure that you smash that like button and hit subscribe. This is something which I'd never thought about before now. I had. This is something which I'd never thought about before now. People come across as diet being of paramount importance to their health. I'm not sure you're using come across as in the best way there, Julia. So we'll just say people think that. This is something which I'd never thought of before now. People think that diet is of paramount importance to their health. And we've been going for getting on for 50 minutes. So in about the 10-minute mark, I will take questions about any area of learning, education, or English learning. I'd say how important it is depends on how much. So we need a depends on. I'd say how important it is depends on how much we are addicted to social media. So say it with me, Sonia. I'd say how important it is depends on how much we are addicted to social media. It's important to stay in communication. Derek says, well, if we didn't have social media, we wouldn't have free messages, video calls, and wonderful English classes like this. Thanks to social media, we get connected. Well done, Derek. That's brilliant. If we didn't have social media, we wouldn't have free messages, video calls, and wonderful English classes like this. If we didn't have social media, we wouldn't have free messages, video calls, and wonderful English classes like this. A great second conditional. Thank you very much. Manuel says, recently social media are on the crest of a wave, but not for positive news. Not because of positive news. Because of. It's and then a little bit confused there, but I get the idea. Takeshi says, a lot's been said recently on social media, ironically. Interestingly enough, a lot's been said recently on social media. Social media are mostly frowned upon by the elderly. Having said that, the new generation sees this stuff as a means to become wealthy. Social media is a means to become wealthy? No, really? For ladies, social media is very good to learn cooking and sewing and balance the family to understand the political situation. You know, Pure Care, if you say something like that in England, people will be so upset. Lady, what do you mean? What, you mean men can't learn to cook and sew? Are you saying that ladies can't be bank managers? I don't know. Oh, people are so political about this stuff. But anyway, I totally understand where you're coming from. I live in a family where I do the cooking, by the way. The man of the house does the cooking. Some of the cleaning, not all. A great deal of it, though. A great deal of it. Can I whisper that so my wife doesn't hear? I do most of the clean. Okay, no, that's not. Shouldn't say such things in public. You know what? I take it all back. My wife cleans everything all the time. Theodore says it's a great way to demonstrate your artworks, creative knowledge, and free speech. However, social media does not always reflect the truth. Social media definitely does not always reflect the truth. The news doesn't always reflect the truth. Academia doesn't always reflect the truth. And basically nothing always reflects the truth. You know, the problem, many of the problems with this stuff is that we have too much faith in the things that we hear from any sources. Had it not been for social media, we wouldn't be keeping abreast of the times and soaking up all the knowledge. Fantastic, Julia. Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess so, Takeshi. I'll pass the message on to my wife, Sonia. I'm sure she can tell you a few ways that I'm not. Social media is like a toiletries bag. We need to get by hand. Usually in our country, girls love to cook and handle housework rather than men. Fantastic. I am a big traditionalist. The older I get, the more traditionalist I become. And I totally, look, anyone can go out there and try and do whatever they want. I don't think anyone should be forced to do anything they don't want to do. But I do think there is a role for men and women in my household anyway. Like, put it this way. If there's a weird noise in the middle of the night, if there's a scary noise at 2 a.m. in this house, there's only one person who is going to get up and investigate that noise. Ever. All right? And it would have to be so extreme for that situation to change. You know? So, of course, there are roles, aren't there? Well, lots been said about social media recently. It's important to use communication and news. However, it also gives fake news. Well, it's fake news. Okay, I need to work on my Trump impression. I think I could do a really good one, but I need to work on it. In Vietnam, our wives teach their husbands to do household chores and cooking. Tell me about it, Derek. I know all about this. Yes, he's right, by the way. That is exactly what happens. Actually, she didn't teach me how to cook. I taught myself how to cook. But my cooking, since I have been married to my Vietnamese wife, my ability to cook has gone. I am a much better cook than I was before. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Oh, Vietnamese ladies do have their benefits, though, Julia. You don't mess with them. I tell you that. Yeah, I tell you that. No one messes with our family because of her. Oh, I shouldn't say these things. Because of me, obviously. I'm the man. I'll sort them out. All right, let's move on. Why do some people prefer traditional paper notes rather than electronic ones? Why do some people prefer traditional paper notes rather than electronic ones? So this is our last IELTS Part 3 question of the day. Just going to make that one a little bit smaller so we can see it all right. Why do some people prefer traditional paper notes rather than electronic ones? By the way, I am one of those people. Traditional paper notes, I'm all about it. Yeah, how about Spain, Manuel? How about those Spanish ladies? What do they do? They're very modern these days, aren't they, Spanish ladies? Very progressive, quite anti-traditional. I think it's very difficult to find a traditional Spanish lady these days. Young lady. What do you think? So Pure Care just says, if battery dies, all the notes may be gone. That's not really true, is it? Because you can use like Google Keep and it saves your notes on the cloud. Hero says, few people prefer traditional paper notes as it reminds them. So not few people. This is the difference between few people and a few people. So we're going to say a few people, which means some, whereas few people means not many. Okay, so a few people prefer traditional notes as it reminds them of an earlier time. That's not why I prefer them. By the way, I do prefer traditional notes. I'm a teacher, and I actually tell my students to use traditional notes. Well, don't tell them. I recommend. You can use electronic notes if you want, and I do as well. I use electronic notes as well, but I prefer traditional notes. I hadn't thought about that before now. However, I'd say I love paper notes and the words flowing out of the pen. That's a great point, Sonia. The words do flow out of a pen. Some people prefer traditional paper notes as they're more tendency to commit to your memory when it comes to learning. That's true. It has been studied and it is true. That's scientifically proven. Writing things down does have more of a positive effect than typing things. It's on account of, I realised that lately I barely could write by hand. Handwriting is necessary, but it's a pain in the neck. Yeah, I agree. That can be an issue. You can learn shorthand, Manuel, and some other things. But yeah, I mean, it's true. It is more physically taxing to write. That's absolutely true. I remember when I was writing my 3-hour diploma exam. Oh my word, that was painful. This is something which I've been wondering about recently. I believe that writing things down on paper makes people remember things better and for longer. It does, Derek. That's true. That's not just an opinion. It's not just my expert opinion. It's not just anecdotal. It's scientifically proven. Writing things down, writing down notes makes people remember things better and for longer than writing electronic notes. It's true. As a rule, I take notes a lot every week, sitting with a cup of beer in my cafeteria, have a look at them all. That's fantastic, Manuel. Now I know why you're such a good student. You finally told me the secret. Any student that does this, by the way, is always a great student. If you're a student who has stuff like this and these things, these are ways of keeping track of your notes, you're a good learner. It's just the way it is. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. You can, of course, download the notes from the link, which is in the chat. And in just a moment, will be down below the video. And we're on to question time. If you have any questions about learning English or whatever, then ask your questions now. Pachu says, well, some people prefer traditional paper notes rather than electronic notes because the combination of hand and the paper connects with the brain, remembers for a long time. Yep, this is what we talked about. I'd never pondered it before now. Pondered is a bit too fancy, Takeshi, but all right. I'd never pondered it before now, but I think paying via credit cards means you have to pay for some hidden expenses that are unknown. On the other hand, paying by paper notes are always acceptable. That's not what the question was about, but it's interesting. By the way, there's a study on this which shows that people spend more with credit card than they do with actual real money. There's something about paying money which is painful, whereas using your credit card is not so painful. So people spend more with card than they do with money. And thank you very much to Manuel Gordillo for continuing to support the channel. He is a frequent donator, and when he says that, that means he's buying me a coffee. In the link down below. And thank you very much to Derek for, I think it's the 3rd super chat we've ever had. So well done for that. I'm sure we'll be getting loads of super chats in the future. Once the channel blows up. It's going to blow up any second now. Blow into space. I was watching, what's his face? The IELTS guy. Forgot his name now. What's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. What's the fella called? He's a nice guy. He's Canadian. It's not in my mind. I don't mean Bob. I mean the one who live streams, the guy who live streams. Anyway, I was watching a bit of his stuff, and I appreciate what he does. He does it really well. And he's got a lovely following, and I think that's something that we're going to aim for. He's been doing live streams for quite some time now, so he's built that following up. But I know there is some interest in this channel in me doing those kind of live interactions with students, and I'm happy to do it. But it's not going to be the thing that we do all the time. Yeah, Adrian. Adrian's the fellow I mean. Yeah. I was watching a bit of his stream. If I was sick, would he take care of me? What type of if clause is it? That's a second conditional, Takeshi. Second conditional. And you can say if I were with W-E-R-E instead of if I was, W-A-S. Most popular in the world? Really? Surely not. Is he the most popular live streamer for English teaching? I don't think so. He might be the most popular IELTS channel, but I don't think he's the most popular English teaching streamer. He had 120 concurrents. It's okay. We had more than that on Oxford Online English sometimes. I think the most we had was like 100 and we had like 180 once. Oh, he's very good. He's very good. I aspire to it, but there were some people on the channel who were asking me to do what he does, and I'm happy to do it sometimes, but I don't want to do it all the time. I mean, for one, I don't want to step on anyone's toes, and for two, I like to do a variety of different things. I mean, as you may notice, if you look through the live streams we've done, we do lots of different stuff on the channel, and that's just never going to change because I would get bored if I was doing the same thing again, and I don't want to be bored. I'm not doing this job to be bored, okay? It has to interest me. That's why I'm a teacher. Ho, really? You're planning to take an IELTS test in October. To be perfectly honest with you, Hero, there's two most important things you can do. One, practice with practice papers, especially for listening and reading. Just do loads of listening and reading practice. Two, have some lessons, honestly, with a good teacher who will give you good feedback. Honestly, it's the best way. You can have lessons with me if you want. Just email professorrich@gmail.com and we will start with a free 30-minute diagnostic, and then it's basically £100 for 4 classes, 1 hour each. It's £25 per class, and you can use those classes whenever you want. That's what I do. I don't have a lot of availability, but I am always happy to talk to people who are from the channel. But honestly, getting some feedback on your writing and speaking, and then really working on that feedback. But you need a teacher really to give you writing and speaking feedback. Then listening and reading, just practice past papers. Practice. Talk to the screen, correcting my own pronunciation. Yes. So there's a technique for that, Derek, which we've shown a few times, and you probably know it if you've watched the channel before, which is, it's my version of shadowing. So shadowing can mean lots of different things. My version is listen to a phrase, wait for 3 to 5 seconds, replay the phrase in your head, and then say it. And with this way, you can really hear your own pronunciation and hear the difference. And we've done that a few times on the channel. And I think if you look at the videos on the channel, you can find me demonstrating that technique. If I'd studied harder, I would have been a doctor. If I had studied harder, I would be a doctor. So that's a third conditional and a mixed conditional, Takeshi. And the only difference is, with the third conditional, you're saying the past would change. If we imagine a different past, the past would change. And with the mixed conditional, you're saying if we imagine a different past, the present would change. Listening while working, well, yeah, of course, that helps. Can you give tips for preparation for reading, listening, writing, speaking for the CAE and the CPE? The CAE is probably my favorite language exam, but I haven't taught it for 8 years. 7 years. 7 years. So I haven't taught it for 7 years, Pachu, so it's kind of difficult to give you advice on the CAE. But basically, it's the same as the advice I just gave to Hero about IELTS preparation. So for reading and listening, just do loads of practice of exams. And for writing and speaking, your best bet is a really good teacher who will give you targeted feedback plus suggestions about how you improve. Then just do the work. Yes, indeed. I do have a knack for AI, and I recently spoke to a gentleman called Dr. Jules White, who is basically an academic expert on the use of AI. And I spoke to him on my channel ELT Under the Covers. You can check that out, ELT Under the Covers, which is a teaching podcast by myself and Neil Teacher, for anyone who is interested in teaching. And our interview with Dr. Jules White will be coming out in the next few weeks. And we spoke to him about using generative AI. It was probably the most interesting conversation I have had on that podcast. So look out for that. What do you think about Flex program? Is it worth it? Flex. Do you mean the Future Leaders Exchange program in the United States? If so, Theodore, I can't particularly help you because I'm pretty UK based. I don't know a lot about US programs. So I don't know a lot about TOEFL. I know a little bit. I have prepped people for TOEFL, but I don't know a lot about it, and I don't know a lot about US programs. I can help you more with UK ones. If I'd studied harder, I would have been a doctor. If I'd studied harder, I would be a doctor. That's it. Thank you very much, Julia. That's perfect. I just watched your video about learning new vocabulary and trying to apply the learning words by phrases technique. 100%, Derek. It's all about learning phrases, right? My Vietnamese is awful, so forgive me. But, chúc mừng năm mới. Okay, I try. Learning phrases is the way to go. Learning phrases is the way to go. It's the way to go for learning any language. You know, like when you're learning French, you know, you don't learn je and suis, right? You learn je suis. Learn it like a phrase. I am. Je suis anglais. Je suis désolé. Je suis allergique à pois, petits pois et les lentilles, right? You learn it, je suis, just learn it like a phrase. I'm, not, you know, learn I and am separate, you know? And it's kind of like in Vietnamese, you know, I know anh thích cà phê soda. Okay, my Vietnamese is awful. I don't want to embarrass myself with that. What's the difference in meaning with what? Oh, the difference in meaning? Well, I said that before, Takeshi. Maybe you missed it. So, third conditional is we imagine a different past and it changes the past, and we mention how it changes the past. So the third conditional is we imagine a different past and it changes the past, and with the mixed conditional we imagine a different past and we mention how it changes the present. Now you can also have a mixed conditional which is a bit different, which is the other way. Which is we can imagine a different general rule or quality and we mention how it changes the past. So that would be something like, what was the conditional you used? If I had studied harder, I would have been a doctor. Okay, so I could say, if I were a better student, I would have become a doctor. So that's the other mixed second, third. And there's my little advertisement for our teaching podcast. If you're interested in education and you have a very high level of comprehension, fill in the blanks for use of reading. See how to do this. Any techniques. There's always given 4 options and drop down. We have to choose. Yeah, so it's really tough because the options normally are about which one fits in terms of use and collocation. So actually knowing the meaning, the general meaning, doesn't help, because often there are 2 or 3 synonyms in the options. The only thing I can tell you, Pachu, is it's all about collocation. So collocation means what other words does this word go with? So you find a word and it goes well with other words, like absolutely fantastic, absolutely amazing, right? Those words go together. And learning collocations like that, which is, as Derek said before, it's about learning phrases, that helps you in this sort of area where you're trying to determine which of these words is the best one. Like a range of products. This shop has a range of products. Is it great, big, fat, or wide? Great, big, fat, or wide? This shop has a range of products. The answer is wide, because we have the collocation, the phrase a wide range of products. Why is it wide? What's the problem with a great range of products or a big range of products? Well, it doesn't sound right. That's it. There's no problem with grammar. There's no problem with meaning. It just doesn't sound right. And that is the level of English you need to be good at that CAE question. No, that's not true, Takeshi. Both of those mean that you are not a doctor. It's just that the third conditional means in the past you would have become a doctor, whereas the mixed conditional means now you would be a doctor, if on the condition that we change something in the past. All right, everybody, thank you as always for your time and attention. My name has been Professor Rich, and this is the best damn place on the internet to learn English. If you've enjoyed the class today, make sure that you like, subscribe, and leave a message down below. I'll be back on Saturday. And until then, have a lovely, lovely rest of your week. And I will catch you later. Bye-bye.